Hello, viewers. Tonight, or rather, this evening, I'm going to talk about magic again. Now, I have made about, how many has it been? At least 2 videos about magic. Basically, every time I learn anything different, I basically delete the previous video to correct any mistakes. So a lot of what I remember apparently came from information entries, because I had vague memories about things like paramagic, and I used to always think that the magic effect was something very significant in the game. And so I have some new information. Well, not necessarily new, all of this is old, but basically I have some more pertinent information. I found the exact information entries that talked about paramagic, because I've played this game, when I'd gotten that far in the game where I had actually gotten these information entries or really looked at them, it was probably, at least by the second or third disc when I started reading information entries. And this was when I was a teenager. I just remember playing through the game and some vague memories of certain concepts. So anyhow, viewers, let me bring up this information so we can look at it. If you do not know, in your menu, you eventually unlock different terms that you can learn about and read about. That is a lot similar to games like Final Fantasy 13, where you basically have a whole list of things you can read about regarding the story that were not necessarily really explained that well. I suppose, in a sense, Final Fantasy VIII was sort of the precursor to that. But a lot of these ideas and these concepts were very confusing if you did not read just these specific terms. But anyhow, when you first start the game, you have the seed terms already unlocked, and they say seed battle operations are noted for their skillful use of paramagic. Okay, Balamb Garden researches the use of GF in conjunction with paramagic. For this Balamb Garden, seed members master the most powerful forms of paramagic. So paramagic was developed by Dr. Odin, a character that we meet, as far as I know, in the 3rd disc. So he appears after Adia joins the party before entering the Great Salt Lake. So he started out as a monster researcher. He discovered GF's Guardian Forces with the cooperation of a sorceress. Became the first sorceress researcher, analyzed the sorceress's magic, and created a method enabling a regular human being to use paramagic. Balamb Garden uses the principle of paramagic, combining it with a Guardian Force's power. Now, this is all very interesting because it has significance in the story in regard to magic as a whole, as well as the whole war between Galbadia and Esther, in a sense, because you would have to wonder, alright, if seeds are known to use paramagic, if we have a record of seeds using paramagic, and this is something that Balamb Garden uses, and we already know that basically the gardens were started by Adia and Sid Kramer, or not Sid. Is that his name? Are they married? I have no idea. Anyhow, Sid and Adia started, the garden, the whole seed battle operations, the training of the kids, with Guardian Forces that are basically going to destroy their memories, which is terrible. I think that these people should be arrested. I really do. I have not really spoken much regarding what I think about those two, but I may one day express even more opinions about them. I think that in the real world, Adia and Sid should be arrested for child abuse. I mean, you're raising them in orphanages, but they're not going to have their memories. I mean, the Guardian forces are going to destroy a good deal of their, in a sense, their minds, because anyway, that is a video for another day. I will talk about what I think about all of that another day. I just think the whole memory loss thing is terrible. I really do. But anyhow, you have to ask the question, or rather, you may have asked the question, well, what about the Galbadian soldiers? They're using magic too. And so, when you think about Galbadian soldiers, I mean, what they're doing, I mean, they're using magic, but according to the scan entry, they're saying that apparently Galbadian soldiers are using magic with a sword. Now, there's been at least one person in my comment section who is basically stating an idea that some people have, that the cast animation has nothing to do with, how should it be said? The cast animation has nothing to do with anything in the story. The cast animation is just a gameplay function. I disagree with this idea. I understand that many people have the idea that this is just a gameplay function thing of just basically green and blue and green. But personally, I think that the cast animation really does have significance in regard to them, the creators expressing an idea of paramagic in comparison to, I suppose, what you consider to be normal magic. Now, there was a time when, based upon, me not, just basically remembering what, a vague mention of paramagic in the original Final Fantasy VIII, which is the only one I play. Basically, I hadn't played this in years, and I thought, what is paramagic? And so I had come to the conclusion, if you hear any cat noises, just ignore them, because I have cats in this room. Anyhow, paramagic. Not all humans do paramagic. Paramagic is very specific. I thought, well, if humans are using magic, well, obviously it must be paramagic, because I thought, well, the only person who could have been responsible for humans even using magic must have been Dr. Odin. But they do not explicitly state in-game that the Galbadian soldiers are using paramagic. The game does not say that they are using paramagic, but the game does say, let us review what the game says about the way Galbadian soldiers use magic. So, if you scan a Galbadian soldier with the scan spell, it will say, they use magic with a sword. It says they're strong enough, but nowhere near as strong as any seed. Now, this was when I started to really come to the conclusion that, well, it seems as though there's more magic in the game than just paramagic that's being used. And so, obviously, considering that you have two major cast animations, and that is 3 if you count ciphers, which is a bit different. If you consider that, let me take a look at these cast animations. Basically, from this we can see that every character that you have has this particular cast animation. We know that seeds are using paramagic, that this is their major type of magic, and that basically all seeds have been trained in this. The game make sure to state that they are noted for their skillful use of paramagic. Now, they at no time say that Galbadian soldiers are using paramagic. They simply say Galbadian soldiers are using magic with a sword. They do not have our cast animation. Now, it is true, when you play as Laguna Lore, Kiros, and Ward, that you are using magic that is different than just your common Galbadian soldier. And I would have to say, to me, I think that in particular is just a matter of gameplay for you to basically play through the story in continuity. We see other Galbadian soldiers other than Laguna, Ward, and Kiros using just a regular type of magic cast animation that, most enemies that we fight have. But personally, I think because of the fact that we can see that the game is mentioning at least two different types of magic in a sense. In other words, they're not telling you that a Galbadian soldier or any of the soldier characters are using paramagic. They're just saying, hey, they're using magic. They can do it. But for seeds in particular, they are telling you that seed battle operators are noted for their skillful use of paramagic. So, based upon this description, you would highlight this, I think, and really consider this to be something unique that seeds do. Not everyone apparently uses paramagic. And apparently, the use of a GF is sort of something that is used in conjunction with paramagic. So, he, basically Dr. Odin discovered the GFs. We know Balamb Garden uses the principle of paramagic, combining it with a GF's power. So, for the most part, the seeds in particular are using the principles of Dr. Odin. They're using the principles of Guardian Forces. They're using them. They're junctioning Guardian Forces. They're using a good deal of Dr. Odin's research. Not to mention the fact that, Sorcerer Adia knows who Dr. Odin is, and wants to basically meet him in Estar, or however you pronounce that particular nation's name. So essentially, all of that, in my opinion, is sort of proof that basically, at the very least, you can say that we know how our characters use their own paramagic. Before you can even use your paramagic, you have to junction to a Guardian Force. So basically, when you compare the way your characters use magic, the way monsters use magic, obviously, if paramagic is a human invention, it makes sense that non-human characters would not be using it. Furthermore, it makes sense that not every human character would be using paramagic. That makes a lot of sense. We can come to the conclusion that paramagic is only going to be used by people who are familiar with the research of Dr. Odin or have been trained so by perhaps, a garden such as Balamb. Now, in the game, their information entry only stateth Balamb Garden and not the others, but obviously if we know Selphie was basically trained in Trabia Garden, and when we meet her, she is fully capable of using the same paramagic and GF junction magic that our character is. Though then again, you could say Rinoa is too, but at the same time, Selphie has a certain degree of training. Selphie can do it too. She says she found the GF somewhere. I believe in the dialogue. So I think that sort of, by that we can come to the conclusion that multiple people in, different gardens train in the use of paramagic and the use of Guardian Forces, that they know how to do that. So I would say, personally, especially for those of us who are looking into the belief, the idea that basically, Rinoa and Ultimecia, we are examining the possibility, or at least if you believe that, basically Ultimecia had Griever junction to her in the beginning, so to speak, and she did not just pull Greiver out on the spot, like out of like a rabbit in a hat, sort of like a magician. In other words, just taking it out of Squall just right then, but she had a particular guardian force in her at the time. Basically, certain sorceresses also have this animation. If I'm correct, we fight about 3 sorceresses in the game. So we fight Adia, we fight Adele, and we fight Ultimecia. Excuse me. First form Ultimecia has, I suppose what you would call the regular paramagic blue-green cast animation, or visual effect, visual animation. We have, let me think. We have Adia. We can draw Alexander from her, and we have Ultimecia. Now, from Ultimecia, we can draw what? We can't draw anything, but she does just on the spot just summons Griever, and then eventually she junctions her own body to a already summoned Griever, which is atypical in the world of Final Fantasy VIII, because oftentimes the Guardian Force sort of junctions inside your body and you cannot really see them. So they would be sort of a spiritual force in you, but you don't physically junction your whole body to it, which, is interesting. But anyhow, basically, I would say that there is significance to Galbadian soldiers, casting magic with their swords. That is very significant because we remember in the previous installment of Final Fantasy VII, in Final Fantasy VII, you would cast magic with materia in your weapons. So I think in a sense, when you see this concept in Final Fantasy VIII, I think it is sort of a nod and homage to the original concept that was presented in Final Fantasy VIII, in Final Fantasy VII. And so, because of that, I would think, in my opinion, it is quite obvious that the magic that regular Galbadian soldiers and other humanoid characters use in the game is not paramagic. I think certain humans are using paramagic. Personally, based on what I know, it seems to me you have to be familiar with, Dr. Odine's methods, and also have a guardian force to be able to use paramagic. So, that being the case, if you're just Norg or a non-human character, it seems pretty obvious to me, based upon my research thus far, that you will not be using paramagic. Basically, if you're using paramagic, it seems to me you would be a human character. Now that I think I've sort of established my ideas regarding that, I think now would be a good time to talk some more about Cypher. Because Cypher is a rather unique character. Now, there have been people who have come up with different ideas about this. This is a screenshot from another video. I will be linking the channel in the description. That person has a very good channel. Anyhow, he was the one who sort of did this editing here. But he found out that Cypher has a different cast animation than regular Seeds or your own characters or any sorceress character you're fighting. Now, some people are saying that the magic has to do with intent, that if they have blue-green, they're allies, and if they have just green, they're enemies. I disagree with this. On the fundamental level, I really do think this has something to do with paramagic and just, the magic that just, regular, people cast in general, or regular monsters cast in general. It seems to me pretty obvious that, paramagic does sort of entail the use of a guardian force for the most part. That it is somewhat particular in that sense, as well as drawing, which we see Ultimecia do in her third form. But all of these things have their own specific animations. And I would have to say that, personally, I think there is significance to it. Now, in regard to Cypher's magic being unique, I have this to say. And it is going to be a very interesting thing to examine. Cypher, if you read his limit break, it says Firecross attacks using She. Now, throughout Final Fantasy VIII, we do not read anything about She. We do not know what She means in Final Fantasy VIII, so I had to look at real-world definitions. Of course, this is a definition I'm familiar with. However, I think it is worth reviewing so that we can kind of know what does this mean. Cypher is attacking using She. Cypher apparently has mastery over She, so if you look in the Oxford Learner's Dictionary, it saith, from Chinese She, literally air and breath. If you go to the concise Oxford English Dictionary, it saith, the circulating life force whose existence and properties are the basis of much Chinese philosophy and medicine. Now, if you know anything about particular martial arts, especially in China, She is used extensively as a concept, the idea of controlling it in martial arts. If you know anything about Japanese karate, they call it ki, but basically the concept came from China. You could, peradventure, relate that to prana in India. But anyhow, She has a significance in the real world. However, in the video game Final Fantasy VIII, we do not really know what type of significance it has, but we do know that basically Cypher, his limit break, Firecross, is somewhat significant because he is able to attack with fire without, basically using a spell slot. He does not have to use a spell stock for his fire when he uses Firecross. We know that seems to be somewhat related to, this unique way of casting. Cypher basically only uses fire magic. When we fight him as an enemy. When we fight Cypher, or rather, when he is an ally. When Cypher is an ally, he has a different cast animation, basically the cast animation of our, ally characters. But when we get him in our party, it is a bit different. So he has green lights, in his cast animation, his paramagic cast animation. All seeds, whether we're talking about our characters, Fujin, Raijin, they all have these cast animations. They never have the Galbadian soldier cast animation, or some of the cast animation that some of these, human characters who are using magic use. We know of no seed that we fight or have in our party that use this cast animation. Whether we fight a seed or not, we know that paramagic entails the use of a GF, at least for humans. So if you're a human and you're using paramagic, you're using a guardian force. We can say that basically with 100% certainty. Now, if you're a Galbadian soldier, are you necessarily using paramagic? It seems to me that Galbadian soldiers are not, due to the scan information that we have for Galbadian soldiers. uses magic with a sword, and they're nowhere near as strong as any seed member. So obviously this paramagic is something very unique in the game. But anyhow, what was my point? Basically, Cypher. Cypher. Let me see. We've seen his limit break. We know he's using She. That has significance even in the beginning of the game, where we see this cutscene and Cypher is using fire on Squall. And when Cypher uses fire on Squall, it's in much the same way as Firecross. They really make sure that we know, Cypher's proclivity towards using fire spells. It seems as though Cypher, I would say that these green lights sort of are in a way an indication of Cypher's mastery of She. He uses it in his limit break. Personally, I think this is something that the creators of the game intentionally did this, making Cypher's cast animation different based upon what we can read about his limit break and what we can see basically based upon his fighting style of basically using heavily using fire magic and attacks like Flare, which is non-elemental though in the previous game. In some of those games it is sort of a fire elemental spell. I think in Final Fantasy VII it was fire elemental, but I'm not particularly sure. But anyhow, obviously a flare means a light or an explosion. So basically, we don't really have to go to the dictionary to search that. But Cypher will also use flare. But if you know anything about what a flare means, flare, solar, blaze of light, blaze up. So Cypher has a lot to do with fire. Cypher is always using fire spells. Cypher really does not use a very wide variety of magic. He is very focused upon using fire spells, and we know that he has a mastery of She. So him having a specific cast animation is unique to him. In other words, if we see other characters like Ultimecia First Form or any of our party characters who are using what may be called paramagic, I think the game is really quite well established that all of these people are using paramagic. And I think that can be seen just based upon visual information and what the games say, if even in the information entries. I think you can easily infer and come to the conclusion that all of the characters that have this cast animation are using paramagic. And so I felt the need to make that delineation. But anyhow, basically a character like Ultimecia First Form, you're going to see the blue lights on top and the green wave. All of your party characters have the same type of animation. So let me see. Can I take a look at party characters casting? I think I can. I have at least one video here, I believe. No, these are snaps. This snaps. Okay. I didn't get... Let me take a look here. Okay, I can just go right into the video and do it. Okay, yeah, your characters... Everyone else who has the paramagic cast animation has blue lights, green wave field for paramagic. This, is obvious. Now, we know that Dr. Odin studied sorceresses, so we know obviously sorceresses can use paramagic. We know that paramagic is somewhat different than, other forms of magic for whatever reason, but not every sorceress is using that green cast animation. But some do. Anyhow, let me take a look. What was I looking at again? As I said, Cypher's, paramagic cast animation is unique. What? Oh, goodness. I have no idea why that keeps popping up. I may have to scan this computer, honestly. Anyhow, he has blue lights and green lights. That's the point. The point is that he has two types of lights on his cast animation. The only information that we know regarding, that we can come across is basically this, I think. I think this is the best explanation for why Cypher, his magic is unique. There's nothing in the game that tells you why he has unique paramagic cast animation. However, he does, and we know that he has his fire cross. He has some degree of mastery over She, which no one else has. No one has an actual animation that is related to She. He also has a green accent, or rather a green tint to his blade when he attacks with it, which is, I suppose, atypical to an extent. But I mean, personally, I just think that the green light that Cypher gets, the green lights that he has in his cast animation, the visual effects are unique to him because Cypher is, he is a particularly interesting fighter, and he has a mastery over She. Personally, that is just basically what I think. I think the game quite well substantiates the fact that the blue and green cast animation is indicative of paramagic simply because they tell you seeds are using paramagic. So obviously if seeds are using paramagic and they're noted for this, obviously why are they noted for that? Clearly that must be because in comparison to other people, their magic must be unique and very highly specialized. So personally, I just wanted to share some of these ideas with you based on all the information I have regarding magic and paramagic. It took me a little time to collect it, to find the right sources, but basically I finally did it because I was quite confused about it for a while, because I had the feeling that I had sort of missed something in the discussion about magic. So, I mean, personally, I am not one who sort of thinks that the blue-green, visual cast animation is just a gameplay mechanic. I think that is a gameplay mechanic that also has a story significance to it as well. Anyhow, viewers, this hopefully will be the latest and last, the last revision I have to make towards, in regard to magic, unless I find something interesting. In which case, I can just do an update video about it. May you be blessed, and farewell.